No.
So I'm going to vote for it. But are we ready? Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Rules and City Government Committee meeting to order. For the record, Alderman Schnellmeyer and Alderman Arnett are present, and we are joined by Alderman Savage and Alderwoman Tierney. First item is approval of the agenda.
Rules approval of the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Please say aye. Aye. Approval of the minutes from the previous meeting.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. We have one item on our agenda this afternoon. It's R 1924, Eastport Choice Neighborhood Initiative Transformation. We just had almost a 2-hour meeting with the director and staff. And so for the record, I'd like to have the director and her staff introduce themselves.
Thank you, Alderwoman Finlayson. My name is Melissa Maddox Evans, Executive Director for the Housing Authority, City of Annapolis, and with me, Asim Nagam, who is our Development Director.
And I'm Eric Lashinsky, Chief of Comprehensive Planning for the city.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to ask for a presentation because we just had one. So I'd ask my colleagues if you have some questions for the director or her staff. Alderman Arnett?
I do. One of my concerns about asking for this resolution to come to both this committee and the Environmental Matters Committee is that it is so open-ended. I have had a discussion with Mr. Lashinsky and Jakubiak, and I've kind of gotten two indications, and I'm just telling you my interpretation. One is, well, we can make it more firm, or two, it's meant to be more open-ended. I think that it is wrong to focus on the Spa Road facility only until it's demonstrated that that is habitable space. So my preference would be to support either the Spa Road or some other alternative location to be determined that would allow the full expansion of the Eastport Terrace Harbor House to come up to the 700 and whatever the number is, in order to fully fulfill what is different about CNI in past redevelopments, which is that this is meant to be fully income integrated to include market rate and other income classes rather than those that are traditionally in the public housing domain. And I will tell you, in looking at some of the amendments that are coming to the Environmental Matters Committee, which you may or may not have seen, I think they more fully address the concerns that I have. So, but rules happen to come first, so we'll deal with the Rules Committee.
Alderman, are you?
This was, you were asked if there were questions for the
Right.
Housing Authority, and I stated my concern and position, and this is the time for the Housing Authority and the long-term planner to respond to that.
So you're posing that question to the director. Is there an opportunity to include specifically options for other land use availability for the CNI?
Absolutely.
I hate long answers.
So does that mean that you would like to make a motion to amend the resolution to include such language?
Yes, I don't have one prepared, but this therefore specifically cites only the former Public Works property, and I think it should cite that or a suitable substitute or a suitable alternative site, something to that effect that gives us the wiggle room to have a plan B or C, whatever many we need.
So your amendment would relate to page 3, line 3, and you would be adding Public Works property or other suitable location?
Suitable site, yes.
If I may say, you may want to say any other suitable site which may yield at least 97 units, and I'll, Eric's, chime in on that, because we were focusing on 97 units on this site.
So other
if
suitable-
this site is not available, then maybe some other site which can have at least 97 units.
So other suitable site to fully accommodate the CNI
Correct.
Correct.
initiative, transition.
Ms. Jackson, did you get all of that? Is there a second for that amendment?
For the sake of moving forward, yes, I will second.
Okay, further discussion. Alderman Savage?
Well, I guess my question is how beholden are we to a specific unit target? Because my conversations with Mr. Lashinsky, I know there's a target that's in the plan, but when I looked into it more, my understanding is that it's, having obviously more units will help us with the grant application, scoring better. But I didn't see any indication that it was a hard requirement to have a certain number of units as part of the project. So how much flexibility is there? Do we have to go for this max? Can we go more? Can we go less? What's the?
That is a great question. Under the CNI requirements, it requires 1-for-1 replacement in addition to increasing density to double the capacity of the site, which is where we came up with the numbers for the additional units. And so in order to get the maximum points possible when we're applying for the application, we want to meet the criteria for density that is in the grant program. And so that is why we are increasing the density.
And that's based on the current zoning restrictions, right? For those sites.
So the number that at a minimum of units that we need to reach is about 715 for the grant. So that is the realm in which we're trying to get to. We only, because of current zoning requirements, we can only build, I think it's 626 at Eastport Terrace Harbor House. So we have to find an alternative site for those additional.
Well, I guess,
It's a combination of zoning and critical area.
Yeah. I mean, well, how exactly does the scoring work? Like, are they looking just for ballpark around doubling? Are they looking for hard numbers as a part of their?
Yes, there is
that
a
we have to
formula.
stick to?
There are formulas that we stick to with regards to density. Whether you meet those formulas or criteria when you submit your application will determine whether they give you points or not for that particular category. There are several categories within the application. And as far as the density aspect, that's what that pertains to. So when we look for sites, we want to look for sites that can accommodate the CNI requirement.
Okay. Well, I do like the flexibility that the amendment would provide. I like the flexibility that your proposed amendment would provide. Because again, one of the items on my amendment, which we'll get to, would be at least allowing this property to be used for potential city offices as well. And so in order to have that work, either we would have to find potentially additional housing sites off the property, or perhaps just make it more of a mixed use between residential housing units and city offices, right? But what I'm also getting at is, well, if we need to adjust the zoning to make it work on a particular parcel, maybe we need to look at that to meet all of our goals with this.
That scenario, I believe, would meet other criteria that CNI includes for mixed use. So the idea
Yes.
of melding housing with a compatible office use like city offices would actually probably raise the scoring. It would meet, be a really good thing, I think.
Maybe we
for
could
CNI.
finally put that permit window somewhere. Didn't the mayor want a permit window where somebody could walk up and?
So there's more. So having,
Alderman Arnett?
well, so having opened the store, I have created another problem. Because that's my job. That's what Ward 8 does. And the language says the use of this property or an alternative of appropriate size site, that assumes that this is property that the city already owns. And so in thinking about what are potential alternative sites, the radio station is another potential alternative site, but that would require the acquisition of that. And so a question I would put to Mr. Lashinsky is, has any thinking been done in terms of city-owned properties that could accommodate the potential for a Plan B approach to accommodate the CNI initiative?
There was an extensive effort to look at other sites during the CNI planning process that our consultant conducted, and they spoke to other developers and county's housing agency. And part of the reason we're focusing on a Spa Road site is that it is the most straightforward, and it's really the only viable location that we have at the moment. It's city owned. It's a great location. It's where you would want to situate residents because of its proximity to schools and services and transit and recreation amenities. And so that's why we're talking about the Spa Road site. It's not just because it's city owned and vacant, but because it has all these other amenities. But my understanding with the CNI, it would help for the site to be owned by the city or by HACA, but it could be privately owned. It's just that there has to be a commitment by that owner to participate in CNI. So there has to be an agreement that they're going to be meeting the goals of CNI, with their development. So, if there was a development on any other private site in the city that was seeking low-income tax credits, for example, I think we could, work with them in some way, but.
Right, so thank you for that clarification, and unfortunately, you confirmed a fear that I had, which is this may be the only site, and if it is the only site, remediation will have to happen, and I assume the responsibility for remediation will fall to the city because we created the condition. This does not speak to that, but I certainly can't see how, particularly with the financial difficulties elsewhere with the housing authority, that we can hand them a property that needs several $1 million worth of remediation. So that's my concern about, one sentence of resolution that really covers up a number of complications that are not addressed.
I could easily see a simple amendment that just clarifies that, that the use is contingent upon the remediation of the site. I think that there's no, if it wasn't in this resolution already, I don't know that was intentional. I think it was, I don't know, but if that's the concern, that there's something unsaid here, it could definitely be clarified. That I think it was kind of understood, that as Director Vogel mentioned, there's a lot of scrutiny over how this site will be used. regulatory frameworks from the state and the federal government. So it's not as if we're going to be situating anybody on this site unless we follow those protocols. So, that could be clarified in the amendment, in an amendment for sure.
Well, I think
Before we go on, let me get clarification on what we're talking about. I thought the amendment was to add another option for land. If it's not the Spa Road, we can look at other options.
Correct.
But now I've also heard the mitigation piece. So what are we really talking about? Is your amendment speaking to considering other options? And we know that the issue that comes with that is acquisition of the land if it's not ours.
So you're absolutely
Do a
right.
quick
and-
point of information.
Alderman?
We both have amendments, Alderwoman Tierney and I, that are going to address the remediation
And I will call
part.
on you also. I was just trying to get the committee's interest
Right.
in first, so.
So you're correct. I mean, this is almost like a bifurcated, there's the Spa Road site and its need for recognition of mitigation. We also need to it says use. I'm willing to leave that loose now, but the mayor mentioned, and I'd heard it from him before, a ground rent, which means it remains in the property of the city. But no one's talking about the rent. No one's talking about that, and the duration of it and the amount of it annually. I have a suspicion I know what the city's contribution would be, which is a ground rent for 100 years at $1 a year. But none of that is made clear here, and that's an issue I did raise with Director Jakubiak, is when will that be revealed? When will that become clear? And if we pass this resolution, since none of the council or the chief executive officer, is there even an avenue, other than maybe through approving the city's annual budget, for the council to be party to those kinds of further development of details?
So if I may
Okay,
provide some assistance. So the purposes for this resolution would be for this committee and overall the city to agree for us to include Spa Road to explore the residential and/or be commercial, mixed use for the Choice Neighborhood project. The intricacies and the details of the extent of the use will have to be determined after remediation efforts or after actual testing of the site and the determination of what level of remediation efforts are necessary, even if remediation is feasible.
Right, exactly.
If so, to what extent, how many actual units can be constructed on the site. So there are many questions right now that we will not be able to answer in detail because there is a lot of work that needs to be done. But the purposes of this is for the city to demonstrate a commitment of some sort, in this case, land, towards this effort. It is a later question to be answered whether or not it actually can be included in the overall price. So I just wanted to make those distinctions on what needs to be answered right now. And so there are several caveats with this.
So as you mentioned in your earlier presentation, there's several stages. This is a necessary ingredient to get to the next stage, which will then be followed potentially by a whole set of additional stages, depending upon the suitability of this site or other sites, and depending upon the financing of this site. For example, if the city had to acquire another property, that would be a major acquisition.
Correct.
And would need to be budgeted for, and so we would have to put that in our budget and so forth. So that's really where I wanted to get to is, this, even with refinements or not, is needed right now for you to proceed with the next step in the procurement process, which is to line up the people that are going to do the implementation.
Correct.
Thank you.
Alderman Chandler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I do want to stay, I have some questions not related to this amendment for when the timing is appropriate that I was not able to ask during the actual presentation. But for this amendment specifically, let's say that the Spa Road site was not able to be remediated to a point where people could live on it safely. And we don't have any other city-owned property, and we don't want to deal with acquisition of other potential properties. Do we have the ability to amend the zoning of the current Harbor House and Eastport Terrace properties in a way that does not bump up against some of the critical area problems? Like, could we upzone? I am a fan of getting taller, yes. But do we have that ability, or do we end up bumping into some of those state critical area problems as well?
I would say we would not be changing the critical area requirements, but the zoning is a local governance issue that could be changed. I mean, it doesn't have to be specific to that property either. I mean, it could be a broader initiative that we've talked about, but.
So we would have, without bumping into other state regulations, the ability to upzone all this. And I do want to say, though, I found the presentation today very helpful, because hearing that the Maryland Department of the Environment is going to be signing off on all remediation efforts, on all efforts of if the property can even be safely remediated, and hearing that this really isn't a Herculean lift, it's pretty standard in a lot of brownfield redevelopment sites that are done very safely. So I guess what I would like to add to the amendment is either or other sites and or upzoning existing ones, or is that not necessary according to, or do we not think that's necessary and would just add extra language?
That you're taking it out of the realm of a recommendation and putting it into our responsibility, because we can upzone.
Yeah. All right. In that case-
So we could save that, I assume, for the next step, maybe. I mean, if that's an interest that we're putting out there.
I think saving that for the next step, if it's required, would probably be for the best. So I will withdraw my.
Okay, so the motion is,
Inquiry.
the amendment is still on the floor as was stated, to add or alternative sites. And it would be in a couple of places throughout. I'm going to call on Alderwoman Tierney.
Thank you so much for indulging me. In the evaluation, this is directed to Mr. Lashinsky, and my colleague, Alderman O'Neill, had this question as well. In the evaluation of opportune areas to add the
Is your mic on, Alderwoman?
97 units, was the existing, like Robinwood, for example, was there, thinking outside the box, was there a thought, well, what if we redevelop Robinwood with more density? You know, that's already a city property. Why can't we look at that? I mean, there's a lot of logistics there, but could we obtain more units there with a high density development in that? I don't know how much land we're talking about.
Is there space in around the Robinwood community to expand Robinwood? I think
Well, I was
that's what
thinking it
you're
would be a
asking.
redevelopment. It would be,
Right, for a
yeah, it
real-
would be a whole overhaul. Was that looked at at all?
So for the purposes of this particular project, there is a geographic area that is within the scope of choice neighborhoods. And it does not include Robinwood. So it technically cannot be included. It is also, I'm not under the understanding that any of the land at Robinwood is city-owned. It is under the Housing Authority and under deed of trust with HUD. And so I don't know, for purposes of rezoning, we will actually, to redevelop the Robinwood neighborhood, which would be a separate project, we would be exploring what necessary zoning changes the city could initiate to help increase density there for that project. And that actually will be coming before you within the next year or so for that project. But it's a separate.
It's separate,
It's
yeah. I
separate
was looking for a
project
win-win that.
from CNI, not within the scope
Oh,
of
that's
this.
Yeah, I was looking for a win-win, you know, we redevelop at the same time and add extra units, but if they're separate, I guess we can't. Okay.
Well, let me ask,
Yeah.
and I'm going to call on you, Alderman Schnellmeyer. Does the property, if, in order to include it as part of the CNI, does it have to have close proximity? Does it have to be contiguous to the property? I think Spa Road is by virtue of the creek that runs through, right?
No,
Or maybe not.
it does not have to be contiguous. It can be within 25 miles of the initial bordered CNI site. And so if the city or if the county or any other entity owned land that could be attributed to the CNI project, we would be pursuing that, as we have been pursuing all governmental entities and land opportunities. The city stated it had this particular one, and since it was in closer proximity to the initial CNI bordered site, we thought that it would be a great addition, and particularly since it goes to the overall development. There's Hawkins Cove, redevelopment that will be forthcoming, and many other projects the city was taking on, that this would be a great addition to CNI. And so I hope that answers.
So that I was trying to get to Alderwoman Tierney's question, and I think she was asking if there is additional land around Robinwood, does it have to be part of Robinwood that you
yes.
would consider using that was already HACA property? Am I?
Right, try to make the
So
most of,
that we can't do. That's the distinction. So we could consider other properties that we could acquire or obtain a lease from another entity, but we can't utilize our property for this particular project unless it was originally within the geographic area that's designated as choice neighborhood. If we had property that was a little bit closer than Robinwood and still within the CNI tract, then yes, we could.
I thought you just said it had to be within 25 miles. What does that mean?
If it's a private development. I think she was saying if it's a private development, right?
Yeah, so there's like two different, and I know I don't want to be confusing. So we were allowed to combine Eastport Terrace, the easiest way to explain this, and Harbor House because they were in such close proximity to one another for purposes of CNI, because it had a specific area. We can't automatically add other public housing sites to it. That has to be a separate project. And those are just HUD requirements.
I understand. We were
So if
trying to get to
we
whether you had land.
Owned other land outside of public housing, let's say under our nonprofit, or if there were was some other plot of land that the housing authority owned that was within 25 miles of the original area, then yes, we could, but we can't use the other public housing.
Yeah, I don't think that was her question. She was talking about additional land surrounding the property.
Well, that was actually both. But I guess CNI is new development, new, it has to be new, it's not retrofitting or I thought it would be, at the same time, we would be retrofitting Robinwood, which needs to be done, and then expand on the property, put it there, but, not if it has to be new development. I was trying to capture Robinwood as because that would be great if we could
Okay,
remodel
thank
it.
you. I'm going to call on Alderman
Yep.
Schneidermeyer and then over to Alderman
Yep.
Savage.
You asked a similar question to what I was going to, so I yield my time.
Thank you. Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to the next step question, I think there are a number of things that we might want to look at in the future besides the zoning, which I think is too big of a can of worms to open up now, but in the future, but also looking at the parking requirements, because if you look at the design, it's still very heavily dependent on, there's a huge parking lot. So channeling Alderman Schneidermeyer here, I do think that's something we should look at, because even if this is very close to downtown, we have a large parking garage and park place, this might be an opportunity where we could reduce parking requirements and put some housing.
Could also put less impervious surface by a creek.
That's right, absolutely. And good point. And so the other thing would be just to make a suggestion for a friendly amendment, perhaps, for wording, would be, so after you talk about the use of the former Public Works property on Spa Road, to change it to say, comma, or suitable property, comma, to meet the goals, and then insert new text, which would be, and the targets, and the unit targets of the plan. So it would read to be former Public Works property on Spa Road or other suitable property to meet the goals and unit targets of the plan. That way we don't necessarily put a specific unit number, but just refer to the plan as far as, because we might be able to put, maybe we'll be able to put all the units on the property, but just in case, hypothetically, we only can fit 50, then we only need another 40, whatever, to put on another property. So I think that just kind of,
Alderman, is this a friendly amendment to the amendment that's on the floor, or is this a
Yes.
separate amendment?
yeah.
So could you repeat it for us all so the maker can decide whether it's considered friendly or
So you
what
want
we'll
to
do?
read the final wording too? So starting with former Public Works property on Spa Road, comma.
Page, line,
Oh, sorry, this would be the, page 3, yeah.
because it's also on page 1, line 25.
Page 3, line 1 through 3. Hereby be it resolved by the City Council that the City of Annapolis will adopt the Eastport Choice Neighborhood Initiatives Transformation Plan and approve the use of the former Public Works property, comma, or other suitable property, comma, to meet the goals and unit targets of the plan.
Or other city-owned property, is it,
Just other suitable
Other
property.
suitable.
oh, suitable.
To meet the goals and unit targets of the plan.
Alderman Arnett?
I don't really have both of them in front to compare, but I think they're saying the same thing. So my sense is that we need to make sure that we have the possibility of considering something other than Spa Road should it fail to meet the requirements in any way, not just remediation. So I can't really compare in my mind.
So I'm looking at, tell me if it's not different, if it's not the same. On page 1, line 25, says, starting on 24, in approving the use of the former City of Annapolis Public Works property on Spa Road and then we insert or other suitable property to meet the plan's goals. And then going to page 3, page 3, line 3, and approve the use of the former Public Works property or other suitable property to meet the goals of the plan.
Right. Which is what I thought I was proposing.
Right.
I'm not sure how it,
He added suitable property as opposed to alternative sites.
okay, suitable.
Okay, so that's accepted as a friendly amendment. So the amendment is to add or other suitable property is
To
what I
meet,
have.
to meet
To
the
meet the
objectives.
goals. So we're just inserting or other suitable properties to meet the goals. Alderman
Well,
Savage?
the other part of that, which I
I'm sorry.
wanted in there, was the end unit targets. Because I thought you mentioned putting in a specific unit number.
I did not.
Oh,
I just assumed that's part of the goals. And it is specified under the HUD parameters of the amount of additional units we have.
okay. Well,
So that's
never
part of the
mind.
goals of the CNI initiative.
Never mind then.
Yeah.
So is that accepted as a friendly amendment?
I'll just withdraw it. It doesn't matter.
No, I'm just talking about going back to your original
Yeah.
amendment, to adding or other suitable property.
Yeah, other suitable properties.
Okay.
Pardon? Yes, ours.
So that's the motion on the floor,
Right.
the amendment that's on the floor. Further discussion about it? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Further discussion about R 1924 in general. Alderman Schnellmeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a couple questions I had about the first part of the presentation previously, but I wanted to kind of kick back on them, waiting for so we can get some of the environmental presentation aspects. So you said some of the issues with funding can come from transportation assistance or density bonuses. So one of the questions that I have is, what is transportation assistance? What does that look like as far as qualifying for cities' participation in this? Is that adding a bus stop? Is that multimodal transportation or building a lot of walking paths? What is that, all of the above? Is it purposely vague so that we can just do cool transit stuff and it counts? Or is there there's not a very specific definition for it? It's just improve transit access to this site. Is that?
Correct. So it's whatever ultimately the final plan would require,
Okay.
which we don't have right now. Roads, streets, bus stops, other amenities, areas for electric car installations. It could be a number of things that we just don't know on that level of detail now because we don't have the finalized plan right now, but it can include all of the above.
Okay. And density bonuses, those also count as financial assistance. Is that a correct interpretation?
Correct. I can tell you in my prior life, yes, density bonuses, reduction permitting fees, pilots or no permitting fees, sewer water charges, assistance, anything that the city charges, if they want to address in terms of any assistance, financial assistance, that's construed as the assistance coming from the city. And going back to the transportation for a second, more than likely there will be a traffic study that will be initiated. So if there needs to be a turn lane or something, or another traffic light that needs to be put on over there, so that's where the city can come in.
Thank you. That clarifies a good amount. If I can still keep my time to go on to an unrelated thing, I am really excited about this project, both the redevelopment of Harbor House and Eastport Terrace, along with the redevelopment of the Spa Road site. That one's particularly exciting to me because that is, at the moment, a bit of a dead zone. in the city's fabric, in an area that can really be effectively utilized to create some awesome community and neighborhood space. Most of the time when I come here to City Hall, I actually bike by that site, and it's the spookiest part of my ride because, especially if you're coming home at night, it's this kind of dead zone with some dreary spaces by it. So I think putting something there will really do a lot to add to the fabric of the city, and I'm really appreciative of this joint effort. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Arnett first, and then
So
Alderman Savage.
there must have been something in the water in Ireland, but I fully subscribe to what Alderman Chandler just said.
It's called
Frightens you,
Jameson.
doesn't it? Alderman Savage.
Just to belabor a point, thought I'd look at the design a bit more in the proposal that's attached. And, you know, because I'm thinking we're here struggling and trying to fit the desired density, right? But we do hamstring ourselves with a lot of our requirements. And it just, you know, looking at these conceptual level, I guess, designs, we have just as much, if you look at the space of buildings, we have just as much space being taken up by the parking. And I'm just thinking to myself, even if we use some of that, take away some of the parking, we could put trees, we could put more housing. It's just really, I think we're holding ourselves back. I mean, frankly, you could probably fit all the density on that one lot if you just adjust the parking requirements. So I hope when we get, I guess my point is, I hope when we get further along with the process, and hopefully it's not too late because I know you're putting out the RFP, but I think we need to, looking at Alderman Schammemeyer, we need to get on revisit some of the parking requirements. I know you tried to do it earlier with restaurants, but I think we need to look at the housing stuff too, because I don't want to get, I'd hate to see us get in a bind here with, yes, it's good in the sense that it has mixed use, but, and a lot of these other amenities, right? I know it's all a list of amenities you're going to be bringing into the community, but we're really going to be tying our hands if we have all that parking, which is just counter to so many of our targets and goals, right?
I totally agree. I mean, I know that the design planning team agonized over the parking you know, exactly how much parking to include. I think they did an analysis that showed that there's, you know, fairly low use of parking today, but knowing that when we did Oberry Court, there are complaints that there's not enough parking. And so I think that they were trying to strike a balance there. And I think this project is going to happen well into the future. You know, it's going to be many years beyond what Oberry Court was, and different reality in terms of mobility in the city, hopefully, and the ability to live without a car better. So there probably is some potential there to gain some space back. And, you know, another thing I should just share is that, you know, these current plan development guidelines allow for a density bonus if you provide a parking garage, structured parking, but there was concerns about financing. It's an expensive item.
Yes.
That is a very expensive ticket item. And so, yeah, I mean, if the city was able to come in and assist on that front or something, you know, in the same way I think we've probably done in other circumstances, that could probably help a lot too, you know, concentrate parking, have less surface parking, so.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Arnett.
One other amendment, none of these properties can be used for short-term rentals.
You jest. All right, any further discussion on R15? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman
We have
Chandler.
two amendments.
Oh, okay. Alderwoman Tierney?
I will move amendment number 1, get it on the floor. I'm like, I will move, may I move amendment number 1 to get it on the floor, because I think we need to put,
Wait a minute. Amendment 1 is
yeah.
not attached. Oh, it's a
Yeah.
paper copy, okay.
Oh, it's not, it's on Granicus. I have it on
Oh,
Granicus.
okay.
If you're able to access legislative map.
Should be on there, sorry.
It was on, we had two different agendas, though, so
Oh.
maybe maybe it's on rules. No, it's not on rules.
Are you able to access it through the legislation itself or access it via legislation?
There it is. It's on, because it was on the one I was looking at during the work session, so I have it. Alderwoman Tierney's Amendment 1. We have a couple of different agendas. One has the amendments to it and one does not. Do you have it? You have it already?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, there's-
Okay. Alderwoman Tierney, you want to speak to Amendment 1?
Sure, yeah, when we discussed this at the city council meeting, we mentioned perhaps inserting some language to address the remediation. So I did it as a favor to Rob the next day, and so how it reads now is, it is, at the time, it was focused on Spa Road. We didn't have this friendly amendment, so to conclude then, the last sentence inserted, it says, it would read, now therefore be it resolved, blah, 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 that the city will adopt the Eastport Choice Neighborhood Initiative Transformation Plan and approve the use of the former Public Works property to meet the goals of the plan with the following conditions. 1, a proposed site identified in the CNI plan is suitable for housing development. The city former Public Works property must undergo professional review of the remediation report to ensure that the site is suitable for construction and construction and associated work are not adversely affected by the remediation. That was my attempt to address our concern about, whoa, how can we commit to this resolution when we don't know what the remediation entails? So it was subject to language. I don't know how that fits in now, though.
I don't think it does.
Well, if you're gonna, it concludes, somehow we want to conclude that we don't want to abandon the DPW site. If we address it in the resolution, we should have language in there to say, subject to remediation, because it doesn't say that at all right now.
Right.
Yeah.
But neither does this. I mean, this is broader. Madam
Yeah, Alderman.
Yeah.
So,
on that.
because you say suitable for construction, that could have to do with the soil, whether it would support foundations, those sorts of things. And my sense was that you really were being more specific, wanted to be more specific here about the toxicity or the lack of environmental. But I think we heard during the work session, the Maryland Department of Environment and national federal laws are not going to let us put this property to housing use without all the testing that's going to be done. And they just won't allow us to do it. So I guess,
Well, I tried to be general, just saying, we need a professional review of that report to see if the site is suitable for construction.
but when you say professional review, that's what our staff does. That's what,
And just to clarify, HUD wouldn't allow it either.
right.
So prior to our final submission of our housing plans, construction plans, all of which also have to go to HUD for approval, it would not be approved if remediation were not performed. I just wanted to inform this body of that requirement also.
Thank you. I thought we were clear with Director Vogel that MDE is engaged. They have, as the mayor said, they evaluated the sites in years past and have given us a tentative report and are continuing to monitor. So I'm not sure that this is really necessary,
Yeah, that's my
Alderwoman.
sense.
But when we talked about it at the city council meeting, we were concerned because it didn't address remediation at all. But let me propose to withdraw this and look at Rob's Amendment 2, which addresses the same issue, and that might read better. So I make a motion to withdraw mine.
Okay, well, we didn't put it on the floor, so we don't have to
okay.
withdraw it. We're
Okay,
good.
good.
So let's go to amendment, the Savage Amendment, Amendment 2.
And by the way, do you have the Savage Amendment?
They're posted,
No.
online. I don't know.
Well, we need to get them a copy because I do have questions about some of the wording here, which I personally like, but I'm worried that Haka might not
Well,
like.
can we get it on the floor first, please?
Could we get,
Can I make a motion
yes,
for the Savage Amendment 2?
go ahead, Alderman Savage.
I moved it.
I'll
Second.
second
Okay,
it.
you're moving your Savage Amendment. Well, you're not
Oh,
on
wait,
the
I can't
committee,
do that.
so
I'm
you
not
can't
on
do that.
I will go ahead and move Amendment 2 for 01923.
Oops, I
Okay,
did.
and I assume Alderman Arnett is going to second that motion. Okay, now we're open for discussion. Can we get copies for,
Well, I gave them my hard copy.
okay,
So let me get to the Amendment 2.
is this all of, this is like 6 pages? Alderman-
No, go to a page.
Oh, that's plastic bags, I'm sorry.
Do you want to look
So the one that's on, I have it on,
The one that
okay, we have it
changes.
on
You wanna go
our,
to
we don't
page-
have a hard copy though, isn't that it?
Yeah.
That's what that is. We had it, they don't have it, is what I was saying. We have it attached to one of the agendas.
And I did give them one hard
Okay, so they
copy.
have a copy, a hard copy. You don't have another hard copy, do you?
No, ma'am.
No. Okay,
I'm sure they'll get them momentarily. Do you want me to give you an introduction to?
I was just giving them a minute to review what they have. It's 5 pages. Well, actually, it's only 2 pages, but it's embedded in the last 3 pages.
I think it's better to start where the blue changes in the code.
You want to start on page 3? Well, Alderman Savage, do you want to start on page 3 and just
Start
go
on
through
page
the?
2, end of page 2,
Right.
where the start of the actual resolution. So my amendments do address a number of things. They do address the environmental part of it, but that's at the end. So I just want to start because what you'll see at the first paragraph is that proposed changing adopting to supporting. And, first of all, I'll say I entirely support the project, but technically I don't think we should be putting approving in there. We don't have authority to approve this plan. It's not like the comp plan. It's not like where we have state authority to approve it. It's not like a development project not that we have approval on those either, but we're not the approval authority on this. It's going to go through our entire permit process. So I think supporting is a better verb to use. I think that's legally, I think that would save us potential headaches because somebody could turn around and say, why are you approving this? This is not, you don't have the authority to do that. What do you mean you approve them to do this without knowing X, Y, or Z? I think supporting is just, still conveys us as the council, we support this project, we want it to move forward, et cetera, et cetera.
Can we stop there, please?
Yes.
Okay, Alderman
So,
Arnett.
I kind of like the word supporting because it actually, you're right, I don't think we had adopted, but also all throughout the work session discussion, we were talking about city support, both financial, land support in terms of accommodating requirements for giving pilots, et cetera, et cetera. But it's really, I wanted to hear from Haka what your feeling was about this word support versus the word adopt.
Can I just say one thing before I hand it off to Melissa? I think it's important to see this plan as similar to sector study or a small area plan, which we've done for many parts of the city. This is a portion of Eastport. It goes well beyond the property that HACA manages today. So I think it's well within the city's jurisdiction to be adopting this or approving it rather than just supporting it. But because I think within this plan are a whole host of recommendations on streetscape improvements, park improvements, water access, beyond just the housing element. There's social service component. So that's my perspective. I think it's important as HUD evaluates this project in competition with a lot of other projects around the country, that they see the city's commitment to this as a partner on this, as we've talked about, in the work session. So I think if not adopting, approving, but to me, supporting seems like a lesser
But there was
form of
another
commitment,
word
but
that was used during the presentation that could be, instead of adopt or support, but partner.
Well, can I- Madam
Well, let me ask, and we don't have an attorney in the room, or our attorney,
He's downstairs.
but the question for me
We're
is,
gonna
this is
need
a
one.
resolution. And so by virtue of the fact that it's a resolution, it's not binding. Okay, it's a sense of the council. So that's kind of a contradiction in my mind. Can we bind ourselves in a resolution to adopt something? Or,
So with regards to the actual applying for this choice neighborhood grant, you are committing yourselves to executing to your best ability what is in the transformation plan. So it would be something with which HUD would expect you to adopt and/or approve. Otherwise, how could you execute your plan? So in essence, if you can think about it as very similar to your consolidated plan or any other major plan in which the city purports these are the goals of the city and these are the initiatives we will adopt. It's very similar
see this.
in that respect.
well, he's seen it.
we've been joined by our city attorney, Mr. Lyles. We'll give him a minute to,
Well, can I, Madam Chair, may I,
yes, Alderman Savage.
just to
go ahead.
respond to that, I'm fine with,
It's changing. adopt
Take your mic
to-
off, please.
I'm fine with adopting. To me, approving is this final thing that we often, because even when you look at the comp plan, that's adopting. We just passed, regarding the comp plan, that resolution. It was a resolution that adopted, that had state strength, that was binding. That was our action per the state to officially adopt the comp plan. I'm fine with adopting this, but unless the city attorney thinks it doesn't matter, but to me, it's just, I'm a little nervous about the approval language.
Alderman, this is your amendment.
Yeah,
So are you proposing supporting? You said you're fine with adopting.
well, adopting is not in, oh, I'm sorry, it is adopting. Well, okay, adopting is in the first one.
It's on on the first page, four times.
You're right. Yeah, so I would be fine with keeping adopting, but I just don't want to put
So
approving.
we've been
there.
having this discussion for the last 5 minutes, and you're keeping adopting? Yes,
But
okay.
the approving part of it, I have more concerns about.
But the reason we brought the city
Alderman
attorney
Arnett.
up was the question was asked, can we adopt the plan through resolution as opposed to supporting the plan? The director, the Housing Authority director made the point that adopting is a more fulsome commitment, and I'm trying to put words in your mouth, but on the part of the city, saying if we adopt this, we are now party to this plan as opposed to supporting it. Yeah, good luck, we support it, but,
Right.
have a good time in the future, kind
from-
of thing.
I'm sorry.
But the legal question is, do we have for me anyway, do we have the authority by resolution to adopt the CNI program?
Mike Lyles, City Attorney, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Alderman Savage.
Can I ask a follow-up question to the city attorney? So I'm fine with adopting. I think my original intention was more so with approving. Should we have, I'm trying to think how to word this. So are there concerns with having language in a resolution that says approving? Because this would say we're approving the use of the use of city property to meet the plan's goals. In my mind, the approval seems, I see that more as a part of the development process down the line. I'm worried that carries a little too much weight as opposed to something else. So I guess.
Mike Lyles, City Attorney, if there's any weight, the weight is on yourselves. You know what your intention is. Through the sentiments in the resolution, there should fundamentally be no real difference in the words if your intent is to actually do something. Here, from what I've heard, you have, with the wording that's to me legally sufficient, to put the administration on course to do all the things necessary to bring back to you options for you to make decisions about, including land dispensation, land disposition, budgetary considerations, and things like that. That's really what this is about, giving the administration the authority to move forward and present to you options for future consideration, which is always necessary as these things progress. Mm-hmm. I don't see a conflict or diminution of your authority down the road. It's just, I think, giving the administration the authority to move out and to come back to you with decision points that you might need in the future. I think it's wholly appropriate and legally sufficient to use the language that's in there.
Okay. So I'm not so much concerned about diminishing our authority down the road, but I am concerned about kind of jumping the gun, because approval seems very final to me, and with these environmental concerns that are out there and still need to be studied, as far as we don't know how that's going to impact yet the actual housing. I'm concerned if we say we're approving the use of this property without knowing the full extent of that's why I changed it to supporting, because I thought supporting was more, we support the idea and the plan, but that's not a hard approval. Yes.
Well, this is a resolution only. So a resolution provides a sentiment of the council and gives, I think, the administration the direction it needs to move out, again, to bring back to you, the council, as the ultimate authority on all these decision points as they move forward. There can be no finality because, one, it's a resolution, two, this is a committee, and three, until there's an expenditure of funds, disposition of land that you own, or some other decision relating to property, taxation, then there's nothing that you need to come in on. It would all be on mainly the partners, developers. But at a certain time, when you need to make a decision about, well, what do we do with the property, that decision is going to be yours and yours alone. And you can look at the facts presented to you by staff and then make a decision. Yes, no. Are you going to put money in? Budget? Yes, no. So I don't think there's anything final about this at all. Okay. This is you've opened the door here, but that doesn't close another door.
Okay.
In our view.
Okay.
Alderman?
But that satisfies my concerns about that particular language.
Okay. Do you want to go through the rest of your amendment? Or?
Yes. So if you go to page 4, the whereas to meet HUD eligibility. I was just looking to reword this to say to better compete for the $50 million construction financing from HUD. and then added some other text about up to an additional 365 units.
So. may I, Madam
Question,
Chair?
Alderman
Yes.
Arnett?
So I think this language, the original language, is written specifically to lock in the HUD requirements and to lock in the specific numbers. So it says to meet HUD eligibility for up to 50 million, we're going to do 37 replacement and 365 new. The new ones are the ones that are the market rate and other income categories. And so the question I have, again, to the Housing Authority and to Mr. Lashinsky is, I mean, this seems to me to be very specific language that is following the CNI initiative application. And if we change it, are we diminishing our competitive ability?
Well, it is to meet the HUD requirements for the grant
Right.
with regards to increasing the density. So, to meet HUD grant requirements, it's part of the grant.
But this was written with the explicit numbers with intent.
Correct.
And so I guess I'm wondering, I will ask the alderman but also the city attorney. This seems to me like these are parameters that are in the CNI initiative, and this is, I don't know, the word that comes to my mind is watering it down. And do we really want to do that?
And
Should we do
also
that?
saying financing from HUD is not. If you're just referring to the $50 million, then that would be okay.
Well, the amendment is to better compete for up to 50 million as opposed to meet HUD eligibility. I think that was
Okay.
your initial
Yeah.
concern.
Okay.
Should we talk about the being able to better compete, or should we just talk about HUD's eligibility? And then the other part of that is, for me, is the 365 a ceiling that you included? Was that a
That's a
maximum that
minimum.
HUD requires, a minimum that HUD
Minimum.
requires, or what?
Minimum.
Yeah.
A minimum, okay. And we're saying up to, so for us, we're saying it's a maximum, 365 units,
Okay,
right?
yeah, I wasn't clear on that. I can just withdraw that part of it.
My personal feeling is the existing original language is stronger, and I think makes a better case to make us competitive. So I would not be inclined to support this particular amendment, but I'm certainly open to be convinced otherwise.
Well, are we going to take these separately, Alderman Savage?
Probably best, yeah.
Okay, so are you talking about, the motion on the floor is your entire amendment. So do you want to change that to only be,
Yeah.
because we've already.
Yeah, I'm going to listen to your comments and then basically I'll make some kind of new motion with just the text in particular that we may want to keep.
So do you want to take the sense of the committee and eliminate the things that are not acceptable?
Yeah.
You know, such as what we did with supporting as opposed to adopting. You know, it sounds like we're taking out the better compete and,
Up to.
yeah, and then keeping the up to, or are we taking
No.
out the up to?
Yeah, no, yeah, I'd say just ignore that whole those changes.
Right.
Go to, I think, let's fast forward to the whereas clause that's completely stricken. Talking about the City of Annapolis former public works property that's been determined to be suitable site. Because this is more related to the environmental concerns that I wanted to address. So my proposal is to strike that wording and replace it, because the current wording, I think, is too strong, because it says that the property's been determined to be a suitable site. That suitable site is not determined yet, because we don't know, because of the environmental assessment. And that's not what the resolution actually said from 2022. So my proposal would be to change that to simply say the City of Annapolis's former public works property has been prioritized to include affordable housing through the adoption of Resolution R 2022. I think it meets the same intention, but it's just worded in a safer manner in my mind.
And it's also consistent with the amendment we've already proposed, that if this site doesn't work, we need a suitable alternative site to meet the CNI objectives.
Yeah.
So unless there's some
So-
issues from Melissa or Eric, I kind of like this one.
Okay, so far, that's the only one that we've accepted of these amendments.
Well,
Okay,
That's,
go on, we'll keep track.
I know you will. And then the next one I'd wanted to just bring up would be the first whereas that's all in blue. And this is in a new edition that says, this addresses the point of looking for opportunities to add city, I was going to say housing, but office space for city employees. Hopefully they will have housing opportunities here too. But whereas the City of Annapolis government continues to grow and perpetually struggles with finding adequate space to house our employees, and the former public works property could include the construction of new space for city offices.
Madam Chair?
Alderman Arnett?
So I have two difficulties with this. One, I think it's confusing the CNI initiative with other city issues, but if the Spa Road facility is developable and we're retaining ownership of that and thinking about a ground rent for the HACA portion of it, we always have the option of doing these other uses for the remaining property. So I guess I'm worried that this is sort of detracting from the CNI initiative to throw in an initiative that is of real concern, but for another part of the city business.
Well, my rationale is that
By the way, we're doing the environmental matters meeting.
I know. I don't want to 100%, I don't want to commit this property to all 100% housing, because my fear is that'll close the door to having some other related ancillary use for office buildings. If we do proper mixed use, we will have opportunities on the first floor even to put some office space. But I want to make sure that's worded in here so that they know that should be looked at as a part of the project. Because I don't want to go down the road and find out, oh, this says we approved having the entire site used for housing. Nope, we can't do anything else for office space.
But that, we're controlling the property. If it's a Spa Road facility, we're controlling the remainder of the property. We're not providing the whole 18.1 acres to the CNI. There's a specific plan for where the Salt Dome is and up by where the gas station is now. And there's the ballparks. But I think we are committing to enough of the use of the space to fulfill the CNI requirements. So I don't know, I mean, you almost have to do an analysis. So if you look on you have this, I think, the page 11 of the report it's showing the CNI over by the Salt Dome and here. Where else would you put city buildings?
Well, if it's mixed use, you could put it underneath the residential units. And if we do reduce the parking requirements, that would open up space in the parking lot to do more residential and city building. But I just want to make sure that's in there, even for the next council, so they are aware that, hey, the last council wanted to make sure that the city wasn't left out of this. I just don't like the idea of, we've talked about potentially giving up city property or committing city property when we know we're looking for space downtown for where to put our employees. We heard from the law office, finance office, city manager's office, they're all running out of space. We don't have a plan. So I don't want to undermine the intention of CNI, but it just seemed like it was appropriate to me to include it in.
I would turn to Haka and planning. I don't want us to deflect the attention away from the CNI program by including other city initiatives. If it is to go at Spa Road, I do think that we are going to be retaining the ownership of the Spa Road, and at a later phase, we can figure out whether there's also room for city buildings there. I don't think there really is, but that would still be under our control as we get to later stages of the development. But my feeling on this, and it's only mine, I'm not speaking for the committee, is this kind of deflects attention away from the CNI initiative to another important initiative in the city, but not, I'd hate to see HUD officials reading this and reviewing it and worrying, getting distracted or whatever, but that's just my initial reaction to it.
I'm going to call on Alderman, unless Ms. Maddox, you have an answer or response?
Yes, I think this is a great discussion because this is the essence of CNI, increased density and mixed use. So I don't find it to be oppositional to the intent, although the primary intent is to build additional homes, and that's clear in what we need to do. I don't think it's detrimental to indicate that you also are exploring mixed use, because HUD wants to see that also. It's choice neighborhood. And so that is actually the intent of the grant: homes, businesses, amenities, reworking, roads if needed, schools, building hospitals, it's what is needed in the neighborhood to make it a more viable neighborhood for various income levels. And so this discussion is very good because it's not either or, it's and.
Good enough for me.
Alderman Schnellmeyer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question was answered by Director Maddox Evans. This doesn't hurt the overall CNI application. And my understanding was we were always attempting to make this something of a mixed use, mixed income property, just to make this a lot more of a whole piece of neighborhood that we're using to fill in this space. So I understand if I'm understanding this correctly, we're splitting up the amendment, but this part of the amendment does not harm our competitiveness with CNI.
No.
Thank you. I think the problem with this amendment, and I don't really have a problem with it, but I think because it speaks to our need for adequate space, it kind of puts it in a different context. We could take out that piece of it, and it could read: the City of Annapolis government I want to take out the piece that speaks to the need for space, because it does speak to mixed use, and we want to keep that. But I don't want, as the Alderman's concern, because we need space, we want to interject that into a concern for the CNI. And we don't want that to be a concern for CNI. So it's about housing, it's about mixed use.
I was going to
Mr. Leshinsky?
Yeah, I apologize for interrupting. I was just going to add to your point. I mean, you could replace the first part of that clause with simply, whereas the CNI program puts emphasis on Whereas mixed use is a primary goal of the CNI program, the former Public Works property could include the construction of new space for city offices. You know, simply, and not necessarily have to justify the fact that we would need office space because we're growing and et cetera. But
Or an alternative doesn't preclude the use of some of the space for city office or city requirements. And I like that idea that it's now being more of a comprehensive use of the land and including both the housing and the government.
Alderman Savage, are you comfortable with that? Mr. Lashinsky, can you repeat it?
yeah, sure. Whereas mixed-use development is a priority for the Choice Neighborhood Initiative program, comma, the former Public Works property could include the construction of new space for city offices. Yeah.
I like that.
Is that acceptable, Alderman Savage? Sure.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
sounds great.
Okay, we have two
Yep.
pieces of this puzzle. The last whereas,
Yeah, this one addresses more the directly the potential contamination. This is establishing background and just to, again, state for the public that we know portions of the former Public Works property are contaminated. We will shortly be concluding the full environmental assessment of the property to identify remediation or mitigation requirements with the Maryland Department of the Environment. It's just background for the public, basically.
I told you his
Guess
was
what?
better.
say that again, I'm sorry.
It just establishing background for the public to let them know that we're aware of the contamination and that we're taking steps to identify it with the state.
Okay, committee members or Alderwoman, who are you pointing to? Does someone,
I'm judging the
any
expression on the
response
director's.
from,
No comment.
none? Alderwoman Tierney, did you have a question?
Well, specific to that, the city attorney, when I was talking about my amendment one, Mr. City Attorney said that we did not need to mention that it's implied as far as, you could expand on what you said to me about remediation? Just a little
Yeah,
concern.
it's the development of the site's not possible or legal without remediation. There's no way that the city would go forward unless it was fully compliant with all local, state, and federal law, including remediation.
Yeah.
So it's an impossibility, and you don't need to state that we're going to do things legally.
But even though,
wrong.
I think it's, I think we both attempted to write this because of the public's concern. I think we have to,
Yeah, technically,
yeah.
technically you're 100% correct, but it's more
Yeah.
so just
To-
so the public knows.
Right.
Because they may not understand that. I think that it'll be good for us to just reiterate. It's not going to harm anything, I think, to reiterate that we are taking the necessary adequate steps to.
So in
Yes.
essence, it's not doing any harm. It's just additional information.
In my mind, unless
Well,
you think it doesn't.
Let me say this in this way. You must comply with the law. If you put something in a legal document that says you must comply with the things you already must comply with, then it gives the impression that in some ways we're not trying to abide by the law. I would say that there are sufficient other sources where you could put that information. A staff report could be expanded upon, for instance. There could be other comments relating to the legislation where the staff can show what they're doing with respect to abiding by the law and remediation. It's just surplus language, and sometimes surplus language can come back to bite you, especially when it's absolutely unnecessary in this way. And there's more probably better opportunity to expand upon it through inclusion in the staff report, where they can actually detail the kinds of things you're talking about as opposed to put it in the legislative document.
Okay, Alderman Arnett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I take the city attorney's point, but I will point out that in the Eastport Shopping Center, there are 2 contaminated areas, and yet it was approved. And so far, no mitigation is being proposed for either where the gas station was or where the old dry cleaner was. So that's why I think we're feeling a little more conscious about explicitly noting for the record that we recognize that this is contaminated and has to be addressed if it's going to be used in the CNI program.
You do have certain regulatory authorities that oversee what the city does that maybe doesn't apply in the situation with Eastport. I'm not totally familiar with that, but here we have a different paradigm given that it's operating within the context of a CNI initiative in the grant. So I think there's a different paradigm with respect to regulations there. Additionally, with Eastport, I think there's a difference of opinion with whether or not something is approvable. And there are mechanisms to figure that out. And I think those processes are moving forward.
But I would further add that this whereas is a predicate for the following new and therefore be it resolved. So prior to final approval, the development of the plan, an adequate environmental remediation and/or mitigation plan shall be completed. I do like that addition to the now therefore, if you're saying we don't need this whereas predicate.
Well, I'm not saying that. I think that the language is fine. I was responding to a question about whether or not it's necessary. I don't necessarily have a legal problem with the language as stated there. I just didn't want us to necessarily get caught up in defining it so much where you're putting on staff, you will do something legal when everyone knows that it's an impossibility to do without that, right? But I think the language is salient enough here to not, interfere with that
Alderman
concept.
Stoudemire?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would this hurt our competitiveness in the CNI grant to HUD?
I'm not for certain, but I do not get that impression initially.
Your mic was not on, I'm being informed.
Oh, well, I do not believe so.
Okay, so, look, this doesn't hurt us. This gives us some coverage on any potential misconceptions that are getting thrown out there on the redevelopment of this site. I think it's fine. Let's just vote on it.
Okay. Alderman Savage? And
Yeah,
then you
just
can go on to the
quickly on
next.
that, I do think this is more of a political question for us. This is why I wanted to have it come to committee, because just given my background, and if the rest of the council isn't concerned, that's fine. But just from my background, I have a concern because I have studied and advocated on, spoken up against environmental justice issues where poor have been put in very put on polluted land and had impacts from nearby industries along economic racial lines. And that's why, on my background, I feel like it's important for us to call that out, to say we are fully aware and we are fully taking steps to make sure that does not happen. That, for me, is what would make me comfortable approving this, because that's the big, even with the language, we're adopting this plan, but I think we need to be very clear with the public as far as being clear on what we're trying to
Okay, so what
correct.
I'm hearing is, it's not necessary, but it's not hurting anything. So you want to keep it? It's your amendment.
Yes, I would like
Okay, so go on to, because we're going to vote on all of these.
Okay.
Oh,
May I, please
Yeah.
indulge me with this question while the city attorney is here, because I'm listening to both sides of the arguments, and I'm a little bit concerned. How does HUD interpret this document? I'm a little bit concerned about that because I don't think we know, and we were talking about whether or not this document is legally binding. In our view, it doesn't get signed by the mayor. It's a statement of what's the word? Statement of support or what have you. But is HUD looking at it differently? I don't know how else to ask this, but can they, hold us to things in the language? I just think we need clarity on that. Do you know what I'm asking? How does HUD, are they really looking at this document as, oh, wow, they're in it, they're partners, and it's more than just a statement of support. It's, you're going to do this. We don't know. And I don't know who can even answer that, because I hear Melissa saying, well, HUD would want to know that, And Mr. Lyles?
I would be able to answer on behalf of HUD.
Is it a viable question, though, or are you, no? You're not worried
I'm not
about
sure.
it?
I think that to the extent that you recognize that there's some issues with the land and you directed staff to do all things necessary to remediate or ameliorate the problem, I think that can only be positive, but I can't speak for HUD.
I just don't want there to be a misunderstanding with HUD, Melissa, that's all.
So, and it's a great question. HUD is looking for your general intent to, one, enter into the grant, not just application, but all required activities that are going to come along with executing the grant requirements and the redevelopment overall. So to that effect, HUD is looking for clarity on what your intent is and your desire to partner in this effort. And particularly at this stage, there will be multiple approval processes that we have to go through with HUD with regards to land, fair housing, our actual construction and housing application, and numerous other issues that go along with the actual development. And so, which there will be many other technical questions that HUD will dive into. But for this purposes, when we apply, we would attach this resolution and any other type of city council resolutions as a show of commitment from the city towards this effort, and that they are partnering with HACA on this issue. So the level and the detail of which you want to go into that, I would, at this point, we want to be as specific as necessary for the purposes of showing HUD that we're partnering and we intend to apply for this grant, if that makes sense.
Well, thank you. I think we needed to know that. Thank you for indulging me. I think that question had to be asked. Thanks. I don't know, it doesn't really need action, but it might be a reason to include Rob's language, to be a little more specific. You got to vote on it.
Thank you. Alderman Savage, finish up for us.
So the next, I have some adjustments to the hereby resolve. I'd like to ignore the first blue block because I think that was made not necessary by Ross's amendment. So moving to the next paragraph, the next two paragraphs. So this one, first one deals with the public being, this part of this property being used for expansion of city offices. So I'm thinking in light of the rewording from the whereas and what Mr. Wyszynski offered, I'm looking to see if this might need to get reworded at all to say something that we resolve that a portion of the mixed use on this property will be utilized for city offices.
It's the word utilized that, to me, I would prefer something like be considered for expansion.
That's fine, 'cause, yeah, it's fine, okay. So you want to just swap out utilize, considered for utilized? be considered for an expansion. Okay.
So let me be clear, the first now therefore is fine, other than the amendment we already made.
The first in blue goes away
Yeah, first blues, yeah.
because of the amendments that this committee made to make available alternative sources of
Okay.
sites.
Well, we added
And
in
we're
the
also-
amendment, we put it into,
And we're sticking with
Okay.
adopt rather than support. So
Right,
that
so-
first blue one just goes away.
okay. But it is amended, that we already approved that amendment. Those were so we're just, okay, eliminating the first one. And the second one, you're changing the word utilized to considered.
Right. Or some other,
Alderman?
Ms. Reuter has a point to make.
Oh, Alderman, Ms. Reuters?
she's an ex officio alderman.
Cynthia Reuter, Policy Analyst in the Office of Law. Just got a question about the amendment. Does the strikeout go away also?
Yes, because the committee's first amendment will take precedence.
All right.
And I'm not clear. If the strikeout goes away, there's no language there.
We're keeping the language that we changed.
But all we did was to add,
Right, right. So
Yeah.
our
So it-
amendment will take care of leaving this in, but adding on an additional.
okay, we need to be clear that that sentence is there, whether it's blue or black, or
Right,
there's that sentence with the amended.
Right. So the black, there now therefore be resolved, the City of Annapolis will adopt the Eastport Choice Neighborhood Initiative Transformation Plan. That paragraph stays.
with the addition of the amendment from this committee about the ability of having an alternate site that
Alternative
fulfills the CNI requirements.
The next blue paragraph.
No, no.
No, you have to.
Kaylin,
Earlier amendment.
The first blue paragraph,
first blue paragraph goes
gotta show
away.
her.
The strikeout stays per this rules committee, but has
the amendment.
an additional clause in there that says, or an alternate site as long as it meets the CNI requirements.
Okay, so they can work out that. We understand what should be going on there. So go to the second blue, and be it therefore resolved.
Yes, so this one speaks specifically to the environmental component. So be it further resolved that prior to any final approval of a development plan, an adequate environmental remediation and/or mitigation plan shall be completed to ensure future residents or city employees will not be contaminated. Happy to adjust that if people have better wording. I'm the English teacher here.
I think it's fine. And the nice thing about this is adding city employees further demonstrates that we're thinking about a more fulsome mixed use for the area.
I'm not sure that that's needed. I mean, and I know that,
And it goes back
in
to
speaking
adding
to the
that whereas.
contaminated, we've already spoken to the removal of any contamination up above. That's the last whereas.
Let me go.
Oh, good, she's bringing food. Oh,
Well, does it hurt?
you know, you don't have to go through all this when we get to environmental matters, because they don't even give us a chance to have discussion, okay? Just let us approve the amendments
Yeah.
that we've approved in this meeting.
Yeah, for sure.
I was gonna say, did you skip me?
So the
Okay, so,
I would ask, again, the Housing Authority, do you feel like this last whereas, additional whereas, hurts the resolution with HUD?
If I have to put my 2 cents in, from the development community, once we send out the RFQ and this resolution will be referenced and they will access this resolution, it will be good to state affirmatively that the city will be responsible for any remediation and or mitigation plan. So if you're going to keep this last paragraph here in blue, I would then shall be completed by the city to ensure future residents or city employees will not be contaminated, or whatever that language we come up with.
Yeah, I like
It'd be
that.
good to state that.
Yeah.
Mr. Lyles, our city
Yeah,
attorney?
yes, Mike Lyles again. You want to be careful with will not be contaminated. Most ground is contaminated with something. And to have 100% free of contamination is not the standard. There is a standard, I don't know what it is, but there's a scientist in the state, the federal level, that will determine what the standard is. And I think the better language is that we will meet all applicable state and federal standards with respect to our remediation plan, as opposed to that definitive will not be contaminated, because it rains, it's going to get contaminated. A car parks on it and gas comes out of the exhaust pipe, it's contaminated. So you got to be careful, will not be contaminated. So I would say all applicable federal legal standards.
So we got two
Yeah.
things going on here. I think you can
that.
fix that by saying will be remediated instead of will not be contaminated.
That's
In
appropriate.
addition,
Wait. Let me ask Alderman Savage. This is your amendment before we start
Yeah,
fixing it.
yeah, I like where the city attorney is going, and I think this language could be simplified to say something, still working on it, but something akin to prior to any final approval of a development plan, an adequate environmental remediation or mitigation plan, or I'm trying to think to somehow just include in there that we will follow all appropriate state, federal regulations to address any necessary environmental remediation.
May I recommend after mitigation plan shall be completed as required by state and whatever
Federal law.
agencies,
State and federal law.
guidelines or requirements,
yeah,
and leave the rest of
and
that out.
drop that will not.
And put a period after that should be sufficient.
Yeah. Or on the last whereas, or the last should be.
But then there's the second thought, which is either another and now therefore, or part of this, is the statement that's making the city responsible for the remediation.
So what if we say, just for the brainstorming purposes, shall be completed by the city to satisfy local, state, and federal laws and regulations?
Well, I don't want to get into that necessarily. I think what I'd like to propose is just to say that prior to any final approval of a development plan, that all city, state, and federal environmental remediation laws will be complied with. I mean, it's stating the obvious, but I think it just emphasizes that point that we will make sure that everything's complied with and up to par. As far as responsibility, I know that's probably going to come down on the city anyway, but I get a little nervous stating that.
Yeah, you have to be careful because to some extent, it may not be us immediately responsible, plus there are several different categories of responsibility.
Yeah.
Who's doing the remediation? The city won't be doing it, we're hiring a contractor.
Right.
So they have responsibility for the remediation contractually. If a developer comes on, are they responsible for remediation using a contractor that they hire? So that's a third set. The city may be ultimately responsible, but may not be, because through negotiation, we may shift that responsibility and associated liability for the remediation to others with more expertise in the area, and those who have site control. We may not have site control after the ground lease.
Yeah.
But the point is,
So the intent of this was for the city to address all environmental issues, and in that
Except-
would be
accept responsibility.
accept responsibility and the cost. And so that would need to be understood as far as that is the intent.
Well, that's not my intent. My intent is just to make it clear to the public that the environmental concerns will be addressed, period. I don't want to get into who's doing what, when, how much. I just want to make it clear our intention is to make sure those things are addressed.
Yeah.
And let those other how, why, when happens in the future.
And if I might, I think the language is, and with the period where we left it, is general enough to give the comfort that you want without putting you in the way of some of those executive and administrative decisions that must be made through negotiations and other kinds of administrative work.
Do you want me to reread that? Okay. So resolve that prior to any final approval of a development plan, that all city, state, and federal environmental remediation laws will be complied with. Period. Yeah. Good, okay.
Any questions? Hearing none. That's the last. Be it further finally resolved, do we need to change further?
That's
Sorry.
That's Ms. Reuter's addition there.
The last one, be it further resolved or finally resolved?
Yeah.
Nothing is ever final with this council.
Are we changing that in all of our language now, or is that? Alderman, what's your pleasure?
I'm happy with what we discussed.
Finally, which is your amendment?
Oh, the finally? Well, if that's what the law office thinks is worded better, I'm fine with that.
Any?
Editorial.
Okay, if not, then the motion's on the floor. The amendment is on the floor, which speaks to the changes in the the whereas clause that speaks to the number of units, the one that referenced R20, and then the last two whereas clauses we kept.
That's correct.
Alderman, is that correct? And
With a change. I thought there was,
the now whereas clause that was deleted and returned, where we added alternative sites. And then the last two, and the last one being the one that we changed just now to shorten it. That right?
so the utilization was changed in the,
So I have this edited, and I can share this with the
Oh, yeah.
law
we're-
office, and then share it with, use the chair, I guess, to make sure.
I'm sorry?
I can share my edits with the law office and then share the final product with the U.S. chair to confirm before
Okay.
we introduce this at the council meeting.
So do you want this body, this committee, to take a position on it now?
Yeah, I think that'd be good. And then we'll just, as chairs, we'll
Okay.
determine if it's consistent with what the body
Okay.
discussed, if that's okay with the members. And
Yeah, so I think we have a motion on the floor to approve the amendment. I just kind
Second.
of reviewed it. It's been properly seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and then the motion is, I'll entertain a motion to give a recommendation to R 1924 as amended.
So moved?
second?
All in favor,
Aye.
please say aye. Okay. Man,
Isn't it amazing how the council can take a one-sentence resolution and really?
turn it into a 3-hour discussion. Okay, so that ends our agenda for the Rules Committee. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I like to adjourn until tomorrow where we see each other again.
And there's a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we move into environmental matters. I'm moving over. But I'm eating before I-
Dinner. I'll see you all later.
We got to get that together.
I'm calling to order Environmental Matters Committee meeting for July 11th. All the members are present. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended to add R 1924?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, do I have, let's see, we have no minutes, so we can jump right in. Is there a motion to recommend favorably R 1924 as amended by the Rules and Government Committee?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 We don't mess around.
Oh, shoot, we do have minutes. Sorry, it's on the other agenda.
Yeah.
So is there a motion to approve the minutes from June 13th?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you. All right, the next up is, we're gonna use discretion of the chair to change the order here. We're gonna start with 0524, which is the Plastic Bag Reduction Act. And with this, I would like to say a big thank you to, first of all, the Sierra Club for, and also the retailers who came and submitted testimony. But we took the Sierra Club recommendations from the last meeting, our last discussion, and Ms. Reuter redrafted kind of an omnibus rewrite of the legislation. It incorporates, I believe, all the other proposed changes from the Alderman Gay amendment. Is that right, Ms. Reuter? It includes the change in the paper
Yes.
recycled content?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, the new Amendment 3 is, I think, is that the right one I want to point to? Let me see.
I don't have, only have
It is
amendment one.
The omnibus is now Amendment 1,
Oh, the omnibus is 1. Okay.
right, and then the other amendments would go after the omnibus.
Okay. So if you could, does everybody have a copy of Savage Amendment 1? Yes. You have it.
Oh, yeah, I have it.
And so if you look at the, did everybody have them?
So is gay one here? It says amendment one is
just-
gay.
I'd say-
Amendment 2 is gay, and amendment 1 is Savage.
For now, ignore the gay amendment because that's rolled into number 1. So if you look at Amendment 1, this incorporates, so for example, it removes the requirement that plastic carryout bags be compostable. So if you scroll down, sorry, I haven't actually looked at this version. The one I had more colors. If you scroll down to page 5, you will see changes in the legislation itself.
Okay, he's got it up on this.
So that amends out old D.
Right, I have a hard time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Jackie Gall, Deputy City Manager for Resilience and Sustainability. When we tried to go into Legistar on the agenda, we are unable to get into any of the amendments. They say that they're unavailable. I've been trying to go into them all day today, and Mr. Lakonich just tried to go in as well. When you go in, it says this document is not available. So we are unable to see them.
That's because the documents changed in Granicus under the bill itself. And so the attachments would then be inaccurate, the attachments to the agenda, which was published days ago.
Okay,
These amendments were done today.
okay. Thank you.
I'm trying to think the best way to do this.
Alderman, you want to just walk us through this and we can decide what we can concur on and what we can't?
Yeah, so again, this does follow the county's language, except it works in some of the tweaks that are recommended from Sierra Club, but also from the Paper Association. And so if you look in the definitions, the law office, the definitions, some of these are not in the county legislation. It's something that our law office wanted to add, they thought we needed to add. And so we have the definition. You'll see here for coffee shop, delicatessen, a number of others.
Do they have a copy of this?
Yes. And then if you go down to definition of plastic carryout bag, it deletes, we strike out, you'll see underneath there, D, which I think should be a B, but anyway, it strikes out the section that mentioned compostable bags. We're not using them, so we're just striking them out. But underneath this definition, it makes the point that plastic carryout bags does not include plastic bags that are used to package or wrap bakery goods, bulk items, cigars, goes through the whole list. Dry cleaning clothes, these also, I think, came from the county's list of exemptions. So they, basically these, you'd still be able to allow to use plastic bags for those purposes.
So we're consistent with,
Yes.
we're consistent with the county.
Yes.
I
That is
think
all.
that's important, even though I wonder why bakery goods couldn't go in a paper bag.
Yeah.
So does the county actually list all of these items out?
I'd have to look. I'm pretty sure they do, because they had the same.
I knew you had the magic touch.
They provided for the same allowances for these types of uses.
Are you talking about the plastic bag definition?
Yes.
The very last one is not in the county's list. That was added from another city, had it, and we pulled it from there. So we can strike that if you want to stick to the county.
Yeah, I think that's the one the Sierra Club had concerns about. It says other foods which are not conducive to using anything other than plastic bags, that you want to come up and offer. I think their concern was it would. Hey, come up to the mic, please. And state your name and address for the record. Yep. Yes.
Not on,
Press the button.
it says push.
Oh. Push the button, I'm sorry.
Bernie Robinson, Group Chair of Anne Arundel Sierra Club, address 8113 Woodbine Court, Glen Burnie, Maryland. So we really appreciate all that the sponsor and co-sponsors have done supporting this bill, this plastic bag bill, and changing the correct language. However, there is one section, it's on page 2, that's an addition, and that is of concern. It's section C, and then Roman numeral 14, exempts from the plastic bag ban, quote, foods which are not conducive to using anything other than a plastic bag. We recommend dropping it. It's potentially a huge loophole, and not conducive is open to interpretation. A lot of restaurants will use this argument to continue using a plastic bag for takeout. We don't believe that there are prepared foods that would not be conducive to a paper carryout bag, since prepared foods are already in containers. Finally, this language isn't in the county bill and generally not in other bag bills. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'd be inclined to just remove it. The committee have any?
I second that.
Okay. All right. Ms. Reuter, could you just make that adjustment in the minute? Thank you. And thank you for your testimony in that regard, because I probably would have missed that if you hadn't said something.
Thank you.
let's see, so some other changes, we have a definition for restaurants, fast food restaurant and standard restaurant. I don't believe those are in the county resolution.
Those definitions are not in the county, but Office of Law recommends that we be more inclusive on our definitions than the county.
No, I support it, yeah, for sure. And then vending truck or cart are defined in 15. Any other questions on the definitions?
I'm good.
Moving on to the B, which is plastic carryout bags prohibited. And Ms. Reuter, just to note, I'm sure this will get fixed in the final, but the numbers are a little off on the amendment. This states that businesses are prohibited from providing plastic carryout bags, as we defined earlier. They shall allow customers to use their own carryout bags. And number 8 talks about the fee exceptions. This just makes it clear that the retail establishment must charge, collect, and retain at least 10 cents for each paper bag and reusable carryout bag it provides to customers. And this, I think, also recommended from the Sierra Club to match the county's language. And then it does allow, number 9, that just clarifies that, let's see, the establishments may not tell the public that they're funding that fee or absorbing it. That also, I think, comes from...
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can we slow up a moment? I'm lost.
Okay.
We're on B, carryout bag
Yes.
prohibited. And in the original language, B is requirements, correct?
Let me look.
Between the red and the blue, I'm trying to keep up. On Granicus, the red is the new language. On the paper that we have, there's blue, and then there's red, and so is B, plastic carryout bags prohibited or requirements?
The blue is the change, the amendment. The red is the original bill.
So what's in black?
The black should be red.
Black should be red?
Yes, that was my mistake.
Oh, yeah, so the black and number 9, that is Alderman Gay's amendment that I just included in here, which was the getting rid of the original proposed text to require post-consumer recycled content on the paper bags. So that removes that requirement. Yeah, and then like Ms. Reuter said, that should be in blue.
So going back, 9 is in red here. Reusable carryout bags.
Well, the law office, I think, rearranged things, so it's going to be hard to compare to the original. So that's the definition section.
Okay, so
These
going on
numbers
to
you'll
B.
notice, these numbers are not.
Right.
It starts at 6.
So B is not requirements. B is plastic carryout bags prohibited.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have 1 through 3 and 6 through 9. So where is 4 and 5, and what is?
So requirements got moved down to C, which are on the next page. This section B just provides clarification.
So this is a new B.
Yeah, it looks like it's a new section.
basically.
So if this is a new B, then the requirements become C, correct?
Yeah.
So we're still missing 1 through 5 under B?
So, yeah, it looks like the lettering was kind of adjusted. And
Plastic bag. I'm lost.
Ms. Reuter, can you explain at all some of the rationale for some of the reorganization? Might help it.
Yes, so the correct numbering is in the first part of the, where it says amendment, the numbering's all correct there. If you're down in the colored section with the red and the black and the blue,
Are we on the paper document or are we on Granicus?
paper document, there's two different sections. The first section where it says amendment and it's all black, that is the actual amendment. Because basically you're striking the entire thing and replacing it with the text in black. The other section, the very bottom section with all the colors on it, those are so you can see what changes were made to create the amendment. Sections were moved around, and so that's why the numbers are off, because those sections were originally someplace else, and now they're, and things were added to it. And the things that were added and changed are all in blue. The original bill text is in red.
So where is 1 through 5 under B?
If you go to the bottom of page 2.
On paper copy.
It should probably say 6 to 10. It should say 1 to 5. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, are there ones that precede 6 here, or should these be 1 through 5?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there
that
should
should
be
be
one.
listed as 1 through 5.
Okay, so there's nothing missing here. This is 1 through 5.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Are there any questions on those? Oh my gosh.
That's at 6 o'clock, right?
Are you sure you want to?
May I ask then, under the new 3, the merchants allowed to retain at least 10 cents for every paper carryout bag or reusable bag it provides.
Yes.
So allowing them to keep 10 cents out of reusable bags, I don't, how does that work? Do they pay for reusable bags or do they not pay for reusable bags?
Well, so this is the language that would establish the fee, so that they would charge anybody who uses a one-time use paper bag.
Okay, but it speaks to reusable bag, and that's my question. Should
That's
reusable
if-
bag be there, or?
Yeah, because that allows them to provide, they can still provide a reusable bag if they want, but they have to charge a fee for that as well. And that, I think the intention behind that is to prevent them from just giving out bags for free to get around.
The 10 cents is a minimum fee. They can go higher. So if it's a nice reusable bag, they can charge more.
And they do.
Right, okay.
They have that option. But the minimum,
How do we
It's 10
know that?
cents.
Does that say that? I don't.
it says at least 10 cents. and it covers both paper carryout and reusable carryout.
So if they are gracious enough, and I think I raised this at the last meeting, and they want to just give out reusable bags to their customers as a promo or whatever,
They
they
can-
still have to charge them 10 cents for each of them.
Well, there's an exception, one time per year, they can give away bags for free.
Around Earth Day, the week of Earth Day,
Okay.
they can provide them for free as promotional.
Okay. I'm
Now-
good.
Any other questions on that section? Do you want to move on to C, the new C requirements?
Yes.
So you'll see some language is stricken because it's moved to the last section as far as the fee-related requirements. And it just clarifies that our sales receipt needs to reflect that the fee was collected for the paper bags, and that they shall not provide customers with any rebate, exemption, or reimbursement for the carryout bag fee.
May I ask your thinking behind that? Not allowing them to rebate, exempt, or reimburse?
Yeah, so, and again, this was in the county legislation, but the intention is to, the intention is to provide an incentive to the consumer so that they will be footing the bill as far as the 10 cent per bag to change their behavior. If the retailer covers that cost, you don't get that behavior change on the customer's point because it'll be covered by the retailer. And they won't really have any incentive to change.
Okay. Thank you.
The next subsection B talks about fee exceptions. And this basically exempts pharmacists from having to charge a fee on their small medicine bags, and also exempts a number of other businesses from having to charge the fee. And they still would have to comply with the plastic bag prohibition, but they at least would not have to charge the fee. And that's, I think the intention is because they have smaller bags and smaller businesses. So this includes fast food, delicatessen coffee shops, vending trucks, those kind of things. So again, still no plastic, but they don't have to charge the fee. And I believe that, is that also in the county?
Yes.
Any questions on that? Okay. And then the annual, C, there's the annual exception, which allows the retailer to provide the free reusable carryout bags during the week of Earth Day.
Now, on this one, this section deviates from the county. They have the 9 days each year between April 22nd and April 30th. We take that out.
Well, we kept that. We took out the one that says they can do it every month, 10 days per month.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Backwards, yeah.
Yes.
But I don't understand this at all.
What part of it?
I mean, I agree with being consistent with the county, but why can't they provide free reusable bags anytime?
So Sierra Club, did you give some information on that, I believe, on, my understanding is that they don't want to just say, they don't want to allow them to give free reusable bags all the time because they can use that to get around. Again, the incentive is to get people to take their own bags.
But that's what a
not to be
reusable
able
bag is.
To
right?
get their own reusable bags and not have to, not have one provided to them every time they go to the store. Is that correct?
Yes, as well as it would. That's correct, as well as it would not be equitable to all the customers in general that would be financing for the giveaways routinely. It would be self-defeating in the whole process. The idea is people bring their reusable bags and no plastic bags, and paper bags are greatly discouraged. They're costly and they're hard on the environment. So there should be a cost to those, other than it's a great celebration, recognition, acknowledgement, Earth Week, for the opportunity to give out the reusable bags. But it would not be equitable to do it routinely and then those that do bring their own reusable bags routinely would be, somebody has to pay for those free reusable bags, but a true reusable bag isn't pennies.
Yeah.
So,
and I keep forgetting our deputy city manager. Did you have anything you wanted to chime in on? Okay.
But I
No,
have
not at this time.
two questions. First of all, reusable bags are not cheap. So I just can't imagine a retail vendor deciding to, instead of paper bags every time, they would give a customer a reusable bag. But I think the more important question is the emperor has no clothes question, which is how can we possibly enforce this? Who is going to be monitoring what these people do?
Well, do you want to address the enforcement question now or wait till the end of the legislation?
Might as well do it now.
Okay.
Okay. I included the enforcement issue in my revised staff report, which Ms. Reuter has uploaded, and you should have. So I have talked with the Director of Planning and Zoning, and he agreed that Planning and Zoning has the appropriate staff and the appropriate mechanisms in place for code enforcement. The Chief of Code Enforcement resides, of course, with the Department of Planning and Zoning, and they enforce other types of ordinances that are somewhat similar. So what they would do is what the county has done. They would set up an email and a phone number for food establishments, and then a separate phone number and email for non-food establishments, and use that for complaints and questions. So they would address the enforcement like the county has, based on a complaint basis. If someone sees something going on, they can email or phone in a complaint, and then our code enforcement staff would investigate. Also, if they happen to be in the store anyway for other business and they observe what they think is a complaint, a violation, they could investigate at that time. And initially, there would be warnings, and then if there were follow-up violations after warnings, then they would issue citations. That's what the county has done, and the city plans to do the same thing. Now, I spoke with a gentleman who answers one of the hotlines for the county, and he said that in the first 5 months from January, first of all, they had a 30-day grace period in the county where they did not enforce. They were issuing warnings and doing public education for the first 30 days. But he said for the first, from January to April, they had a total of 10 calls to the hotline with complaints and or questions. And they did follow up. They said some of the complaints were, there was no basis for them. They were erroneous. And in other instances, there were some minor instances of violations, and they issued warnings and they did some education with the store owners. There were some legitimate misunderstandings in some cases. And then since April, from April to July 2nd, was the last time I double checked with them again. I checked in again with the hotline staff in the county. There were no calls to the hotline. So it has been very minimal staff time with the county for enforcement and just for questions. I then spoke to this gentleman's supervisor, who is the food manager on the food side of things, and she verified that there's been very minimal time for the county staff to enforce this program. What she did, and she said again, there have been 10 calls total from January, when their law went into effect, to July 2nd when I spoke with her. And she emphasized that public education is very important. She felt that when the county finally implemented their ban, there was only 2 months between the time they passed their law and the time that it went into effect. And she felt that there should have been more time to do public education that would have been even more effective. And she mentioned that they did pay for some TV time to do a public announcement on the television, but they only had one night, the night before their law went into effect. And she thought it would have been more useful if they had run their public information ads at least a few days, if not a week. I paid for at least a week of time on television as well to reach more of the public. So she felt that it had been very successful, that people understood the ban very quickly, and they've had, since April, no violations at all, no calls whatsoever. So the county did say, just like with the polystyrene foam ban, for food establishments, the county would include checking to see whether the food establishments, including grocery stores and small retail stores, were, not retail stores, I mean like convenience stores, food convenience stores, were in violation. They do the same thing with the foam ban. And if they found a suspected violation or a true violation, they would notify city staff. That's what they do now with the foam ban. And then it would be up to city staff to pursue a suspected or known violation. With regard to food establishments, with regard to non-food establishments, it would be entirely up to the city staff to do enforcement.
Thank you. And yes.
I want to strongly reinforce the fact that if it's very easy to say, okay, for 1 week, 9 days, what around Earth Week, Earth Day, to have giveaways of reusable bags, but it would be virtually impossible to enforce it if randomly retailers could do giveaways on whatever 10 days they want. It would be impossible. It would be unenforceable.
Yeah. All right, does that address?
Well, I mean, I think it's saying that it's not enforceable, but I guess I wonder what's the cost of a paper bag versus a reusable bag? It's got to be an order of magnitude more expensive. So I'm wondering if just basic economics isn't going to limit the incentive to keep giving out reusable bags. I mean, I think that's our only potential recourse, is that they just can't afford to continue to do that.
Yeah.
But I think enforcement across all city code is a huge issue, and this won't be any different.
I do have a question.
Yes.
How do you explain so few complaints? And I'll tell you what comes to my mind. People don't really care. So they're not going to take the time to call somebody to complain because of a bag usage. The other side of that is everybody's in compliance and there's no need to complain. So I just hesitate with those numbers when you think about what could be really going on. Mm-hmm. I heard people in stores early on were surprised by it.
Yes.
But I didn't see anybody being upset about it.
No, you're correct. And I witnessed the same thing.
So they just realized there's a new law in town and they were just going to do whatever they're supposed to do. Right. I don't think our code enforcement can handle it, to be honest with you. They can't handle no smear on them because they're doing their very best already. Right. And they already have a full plate. And, I'm the one who always says, you keep putting stuff on an already full plate, what's going to happen?
And I will say, Alderwoman Finlayson, that Director Jacobowicz, he said that, he was very reluctant to take this on, but he did say for lack of a better fit, within the city. He said that his staff was most equipped and he had the best mechanism. You know, they do have the code enforcement staff there to take it on. He is starting to worry. Now we have a foam ban, we have a gas-powered leaf blower ban, and now we have a plastic bag ban that they're getting a little bit beyond their mission. I did say, you know, to him, you know, I agree with him. This, and if you look at other jurisdictions that have a planning and zoning type of setup, in some cases they're a larger jurisdiction and they have the benefit of having a permit and inspection separate department, and that's where their plastic bag enforcement resides. And in the county, they actually have a permits and inspection division department. And it's more of a planning and zoning kind of department. And so the closest thing we have is planning and zoning. And so he agreed that it's by default the best place for it to land, but maybe in the future, as we add more and more of these types of ordinances, we start to think about another home. I did tell him that in the FY25 budget, an entry-level environmental associate position was approved for the city manager's office to report to me, and that perhaps one of their duties could be enforcement of these types of ordinances. If that person could man a telephone number and an email and respond to these types of complaints, and that could be added to their job duties. And he liked that idea and said he'd take this on for now, and we could revisit that in the future once that position was classified and I could hire for that position. So it's one
Feels
solution.
like we're coming full circle because we had a department of neighborhood and environmental programs, and that was eliminated a couple administrations back, and the need is still there.
We
So.
brought back central services.
And we brought back central services, so maybe that's next year.
Next year.
But to address your the question you raised and you somewhat answered for yourself, I've seen the same thing. You know, some people come in, sometimes they remember the bag, sometimes they don't. Sometimes, like me, they walk out with an armful of groceries and then they put them in the bags that they forgot to bring in and then other times, you know, they just didn't have bags, they just put the items in their car. Other times they just pay for their bags. No one seems to be that upset. People start to catch on. And like I said, sometimes they just pay for the bags because they just end up using them in other ways. I have other uses sometimes for paper bags in my home. And it seems to be working well. I don't see violation. I have not observed violations. I live in the county. I've seen some of the stores like the CVS right here on Main Street. Immediately when the county passed their bag ban, the CVS is because they're in the county and the city. I just think they decided it was easier for them all just to go bagless. And I think I visit the CVS almost every day, and I have not seen them have any problems whatsoever with their voluntary bag ban that they've put into effect. So I think people have just adjusted to it pretty well. I think it's not just that people don't care or it's not getting reported. I think it's just that people have adjusted very well.
I wonder what the theft rate is going to be. Because in Target, for example, you don't have a bag, you walk out, like you said, with your belongings in your arms. We don't know now, and it'll be probably a year or more before they'll start to indicate that theft has increased.
Yeah.
You know, even in stores like Macy's or Chico's where I go, I walked out with my belongings in my arms. You know, because I have enough Chico bags at home to last me for a year already, so I didn't need another one. But anyway, that's just another sidebar. So.
Do you have anything to add to that, Mr. Lakonich? And I wanted to introduce you to our new environmental programs manager, Mr. Dylan Lakonich. And it comes to us from Salisbury, Maryland, where they already had a plastic bag ban. So I'm asking him if he has anything to add as far as compliance, what he experienced in Salisbury.
Thank you, Alderpersons. Thank you, Jackie, for the introduction. Yes, I came from the city.
Could you give your name and address, please?
No, introduce himself. He works your name and your title.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard a title, but I missed it, so.
Yeah, every time we first speak.
Well, then, welcome. I'm sorry. Welcome to the
Jackie
city.
speaks
Thank you very
too
much.
fast.
Dylan Lakonich, Environmental Programs Coordinator. Thank you again. Yes, I come from the city of Salisbury as their sustainability specialist, and one of the earlier programs that I implemented there was the plastic bag ban. When it came to compliance, we found that a lot of people were strongly in support of the plastic bag ban, and that we had many, many people coming to us with compliance concerns in the first few months. A lot of those businesses were those that may have had some barriers to language, and it was rectified in a fair manner. But people take this legislation very seriously. And I believe, especially in this area, that you're going to have a lot of community champions, people that care strongly about the environment, who, when they see a violation, are going to go to those points of contact. So that's how I envision it going through here. But again, we do have people internally who are going to be on the lookout for things like this. I think, yes, it's a large matter of communication, but I wouldn't, undermine the ability for community members, such as those in the Sierra Club, to help us out with the enforcement of this, or rather the awareness of lack of compliance. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to what the Sierra Club is testifying about, I think it's helpful to have a week like Earth Week. If retailers want to provide free bags during Earth Week to help people out, that's fine if you want to leave that in legislation. But I think it is a good idea to take out the extra, I think, 7 days or 10 days a month that retailers can offer free bags, because every retailer can do it at a different time. And as Alderman Arnett has pointed out, you don't know which retailer is going to do it at what time, because they can all pick a different time. And then how can you tell? Then a person can make a complaint because they don't know what they're doing. And then we don't know whether they've picked, what day they've picked and what week they've picked. It makes enforcement very tough. And then you're just adding 10 extra days when people don't have to, bring their own bag. So I don't really understand the point why the county added those extra days anyway.
Yeah. Well, so thank you. And regarding enforcement, it sounds like we have a plan, at least for the next year, to help various staff are going to help fill in the gap. But I do think we should keep that in mind as a committee for next year's budget. When we had DNEP, we had the director at the time, now our city manager, had set up positions, which was environmental compliance inspectors, which I think he intended to be more jack of all trades, to help in with multiple types of environmental inspections, be it sediment control, trees, critical area. Now that we are adding more regulation, good Democrats, I think do need to think about the next step and maybe revisit, because we do still have the environmental compliance inspectors, but they've kind of morphed into focusing all on stormwater. So maybe we want to revisit that as far as either creating new positions or retooling some of our existing for next year's budget. But we'll have to,
Run out again.
at the same time, think about what ways we might want to fund that. So I guess we could leave that for a future discussion, but I think it's a very good thing to keep in mind. That's pretty much the end of the legislation. We just had the public notice section, which again, that is the same as the counties. And if you scroll down, that is, and then fines. Was the fine legislation on the agenda too? We dealt with that, right? We dealt with the fine resolution? I think
on
we
the
did.
back.
We did, okay, good. So, that concludes the rewritten. Are there any other?
I just wanted to point out on page 9,
Yeah, there was another.
it says
Thank you.
Department of Public Works.
Ms. Reuter, pay on the enforcement, underneath D, violations enforcement. And then number 2 under that, enforcement. I know at one point I was proposing to change that to Department of Public Works Director, but because this is going to be primarily planning and zoning, I'd like to either change it back to the original, which was the office of Jackie's office, or we could do planning and zoning, but
If there's a chance
think
that
if
it
we-
might go to, back to you, maybe we just say the city manager?
yeah, I think because you can
Or
delegate.
their designee, because we can
Or the
we can
designee.
designate to planning
Yeah.
and zoning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or planning and zoning or their designee, and then you would be the designee of planning and zoning?
No.
No.
The city manager's office can designate to planning and zoning.
Yeah.
City Manager's Office of Sustainability and Resilience
Or their designee.
or their designee,
So go back to
the original.
the original?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Is the committee good with that?
So you're taking out Department of Public Works?
Yeah, we're gonna
Right.
put back in City Manager, let them figure it out. And then we'll just have to, we might need to, well, no, that gives us flexibility. So if we do add staff next year, City Manager can just designate them.
And I'm not, I guess the number problem is the same, because this has 4
Yeah,
through
it
7,
is.
should be
Yeah.
1 through 4.
Right. That was a cut and paste to a different section. And that's why the original numbers stayed with the section that I cut and pasted.
Are there any other general?
One thing to note, number 7, which is at the bottom there, where it says public notice, the Department of Public Works or their designee shall maintain and post on the city's website. That is in the county's law. Office of Law recommended it be removed from our law because, again, we're a smaller municipality and it would be more difficult for us to maintain.
Thank you for that. I forgot to highlight that.
So
I'm
we're
fine
going to
with,
keep that out.
I'm fine with removing it.
Yep. So then we have the gay amendments. Did you,
That's already incorporated into this.
okay. And then the Savage Amendment 3, we're just undoing
Just
that?
done. Yeah, I'm not gonna introduce that
Okay,
one.
so, all right. So I guess we're done.
Yeah, I think so. Anything else?
No, I'm good.
Any motion from the committee?
I move we recommend favorably 0523 with the amendments made by the Environmental Matters.
0524.
Well, it says 23 here, but I don't see 4.
That's a typo on my part.
Yep.
Proofread.
20, yeah, so recommend favorably with the amendments from the Environmental Matters Committee.
I will second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you to Sierra Club and to staff.
Thank you. Just a question, next steps on that?
Yes, sir.
What will the next steps be in the process?
So the next step is this is going to come back to the regular council at our next
amended.
council meeting, which is
And
July
22nd.
22nd. And that'll be the final vote that night.
Thank you. All. Appreciate it.
And then it'll be implemented on January
Okay,
1st.
that's what I was
So we have,
Good. I'm in good company.
Mr. Reuter, do you recall? Effective date? Yeah, 6 months after adoption.
Is that what the county did, 6 months?
I don't know.
They took a year?
No, they only had a couple of months between passage and implementation.
So the county's bill,
Was it- I thought-
the original language of their ordinance had a time certain,
Yeah,
and it was delayed,
yeah.
and so the time certain got squished
Yep.
into the implementation time. We didn't want to do that, so we just did the number of months out.
Yeah, I'm fine with 6
Yeah.
months. All right, that concludes that item, and I.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate all the time you've dedicated. So I don't really think we have time to deal with the next item on our agenda, which is, nor do I have the mental capacity at the moment.
It's been a long day.
So
far as-
I would entertain a motion to postpone action on 02623.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. And
Motion
may I
carries.
ask, is it really 02623?
Yes, it got-
Or is that supposed to be
It was,
24?
it's not our fault entirely. It was stuck in the plan, well, it didn't get referred to the planning commission by staff. No, not you, more, it was, but in a timely
Excuse me,
manner.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I don't believe there's a grace period. I mean, this is a question from Ms.
So,
Reuter. In this legislation, is there a 30-day grace period as there is in the county for enforcement? There's not, I didn't think so. When I read it, the county has, after the effective date, a 30-day grace period. So where there's no enforcement.
But we had the same question with the leaf blower, I think, or the foam ban. I think it was just an internal policy that you decided to take, which was a grace period of your own.
No, I exercised my discretion to issue warnings, is what I did. But we
Same
didn't
thing.
have a grace period.
Well, same result.
Yeah, the 6 months delay in the implementation is considered the grace period.
Okay. It's not an effective date, but we don't have an effective date. Is it effective immediately, or do we have it just
No,
a
6
6 month?
months
No.
on passage.
Okay.
So we'll work with
We'll work with
the city
Mitchell.
manager's office to get, notices out and such.
Okay.
All right, so I think that concludes our agenda. And we're down to just 2 of us.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, meeting is adjourned.